culture of creating documentation. When we're learning something, we document it. We get Loom videos that we've created so people can share, we can share stuff with the rest of the team. And as I said before, it doesn't matter about the quality at the moment. We're just trying to get the document so it exists. But then what happens is you then got, like, for example, our onboarding process, we ended up with 20 different documents. And one of my team said, I can't find what I'm looking for. There's so much stuff here. And that's great. That means you've reached the finishing of stage one of the process. The documents exist. Now we've got to focus on quality. So to get quality documents, that requires a bit more thinking. So we bring all the documents, first of all, together about the thing. That doesn't mean necessarily putting them into one document, but so we're aware of what things exist. And then we need to think about, well, how should that be structured? So what do I need to know? What do I need to know to access this information? So I want really a checklist of the steps. And if I've done this thing 50 times, I don't need all the details. So I have a separate document potentially, or at the top of the document, I list the main steps. And then below that is a breakdown of the actual step-by-step idiot's guide. Because often people don't need all that information. Now, one important caveat here is there something you can do that will break stuff, and you know this, put that at the top of the document in a big box. Because people, and then put it again in the thing where they can break it when they're working through the instructions. Because it's very easy to know how to do process. So say you were, example for us might be upgrading some firmware. And an obvious problem is you upgrade it with the wrong firmware for a different device, and then it bricks the device so it can't be used anymore. So rather than do that, at the top of it, it should be instructions that say, please look at the bottom of the device, check the model number, etc. Because if you put the wrong software on, it will brick the device. And then later on, when they're talking about downloading the firmware or installing it, you put the same comments again. Now, what we're going to do here is we'll go back to my onboarding example. We know that there's various documents that are needed for different people. So the customer's going to need to know what the process is. The engineer that's working on it's going to need to know the process is. And the engineer that's working on it might need more guidance on different areas. So we want to create those as probably 3 separate documents. So we take what we've got already, we combine them, we link the old documents to the new one if we're using some tool that allows us to do this, like the Wiki, or in our case, ITGlue or Hoodoo. And then we bring that, and then we've then got a cultured document, which has now got like 4 out of 5 stars because it makes sense to people. But you see, we have to go through this process to the point where we've got enough stuff that we can bring it together. And you can't just sit down and write a process. It's not possible because you miss steps. And as these processes are being used, your engineers, your team will be refining them and adding stuff that's missing. And that's so important that everyone knows that it's documentation is for everyone, and they should be editing it all the time. It doesn't matter if there's 200, 300 variants of the document, because over time it will evolve. And if you go onto Wikipedia again, you've got that history of all the changes. So if you don't like the change, you can look at previous changes, you can change it again, come up with a better compromise, a better way of saying it. So don't get stuck on this point where you're just creating documentation for the sake of documentation and you're not consolidating it down. You'll know when that's a problem because the documentation will be less useful than it was in the past. Okay, tomorrow we're going to talk about an excess of documentation, and then we're going to be getting towards wrapping things up already.